we had already been thinking this way well ahead of any changes to iOS, and now we have things with Google coming up with cookies. I mean, we're really looking at how can we make the best creative possible that it almost allows people to qualify themselves based off of how much they're watching, what signals are they showing with that creative. But then we can almost come back and serve a subsequent ad that makes sense without relying on the algorithm to say, okay, here's what's next.
Hey, Modern Commerce, welcome back. You're here again with Casey and John, as always. And today we've got another great interview for you. We've had a bunch of them in a row, but we've got another awesome one today. We're continuing on with the How to Build a Brand series that we've been doing. John's been kind of spearheading this whole initiative. So, John, tell me first, how are you doing? And also, who do you have for us today?
I'm not doing well today.
Oh, no.
I'm just kidding. I always say I'm doing well. Like, it's just our routine. Today, this is exciting. We're actually on a 2.0. It's not a past guest, but we have done this same vertical before. So we are doing how to build a footwear brand again, how to build a footwear brand 2.0, a different footwear brand today. And we have Brett Swensen of Kizik Footwear. Brett, thank you for coming. Give us a little background on yourself and on Kizik.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I'll try and give you a little bit of the short and sweet version, but I've been with Kizik for about 3 years now. So kind of since we really started to grow up until now, and we're having a blast. My background, actually, I think you probably hear this a lot from marketers, but I kind of have a unique past. I actually started in the photography business, the wedding photography back in the day. So I did portrait photography for about 10 years here in Utah, and realized that I never wanted to do photography ever again. Dealing with brides and families on a very stressful day, took its toll. But that's kind of where I actually got my start. A little bit of marketing. That was right as Facebook was kind of up and coming, and you create your brand pages, and we tried to incorporate a social media element to what we were doing. And so I was in charge of figuring that all out, and I kind of got the itch for marketing, and then went on to agency life, managing clients, enterprise clients for a couple of years, and then that's when I made my way over to Purple. It sounds like you've had some Purple alum on here before, which was awesome. Was there during kind of the boom time there, and had a lot of fun, and knew that's, I just wanted to continue my path in marketing. And then anyway, found my way to Kizik. Actually circled back up with my old CMO at Purple, and we went on to Kizik, and I'm currently the VP of marketing there, and loving every minute. So
yeah, amazing. So Kizik Footwear, give us the little backstory on Kizik itself, because this is one of the biggest reasons I was excited to have you on, is because I actually got by you by you and your team. My wife is a big non-untire of shoes. She doesn't untie her shoes. She just takes them off, puts it back on, squeezes her foot in there. And so I saw Kizik ads, and it was instantly bottom. So yeah, give me the background on Kizik.
Yeah. So really Kizik started back in 2017, where our founder, who's actually his name is Mike Pratt. He was the founder of OGO bags, which I'm sure you probably have heard of. And during that time, he'd actually come up with a concept, and he's kind of one of those mad scientists, serial inventors, and was just always trying to find a better way. And he had the idea at the time to see if he could come up with a hands-free shoe. And he felt like it was going to be kind of the next big thing. And so he sold OGO and took his ideas and patents with him, and went into 2018 to really do a proof of concept to see if he could actually make this work. So he brought together some footwear experts, and that's when Kizik was born officially in 2018, and started selling some shoes, and then actually Nike actually reached out randomly through email and expressed some interest in the technology and what was going on. And a lot of lawyers later and things later, Nike's actually licensing some of our technology from our parent company, which is called HandsFree Labs. And so that was kind of what spurred this, like, okay, we're on to something. This is legit. Like, let's keep going. And so they brought on marketing team in 2019 and it's been, kind of a rocket ship since. So
you mentioned Nike. Who is that? I've never heard of. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it's an unknown, just a small brand.
Yeah. I mean, they're a little lesser known, but no, yeah, it's cool. And so I mean, the idea behind it essentially, it's like, yeah, it's a hands-free shoe, meaning like it's a legitimate athletic shoe, right? So that's what I want to like, because there's plenty of slip-on shoes out there, but it's like a legitimate athletic shoe that you don't have to reach down and tie and untie, correct?
Yeah, so we play in the athleisure space technically,
Right.
which is really kind of that casual footwear. We don't make running shoes or really shoes, for performance aspects, but anything you'd wear outside of that, which is you name it, from a cup sole to an athletic type shoe. Yeah, you can wear that, and yeah, our whole portfolio of technology and pads is all around ways you can put on shoes without using your hands. So, we call it a step in, but definitely we like to go far and beyond your traditional slip-on concept, because they actually stay on. We show people doing backflips and jumping on tramps, things like that, to really prove the point that, like, hey, this goes on like a slipper, but it fits like a regular shoe.
Right. Yeah. So that's the distinction. That's the distinction. I think when people think hands-free shoe, they think like a loafer, or something like that. But yeah, no, it's a legitimate like shoe that you can go, I mean, maybe you wouldn't play tennis in it, but you could go to the gym in it, right?
Yep.
Like, and do everything you're going to probably do at the gym most of the time. You could probably go do CrossFit in it, maybe. But yeah, so give me the background. I mean, I know you guys had that rocket ship-like growth, and I think one of the most interesting things that we kind of talked about off camera that I want to talk about from a marketing and growth standpoint is really the way you think about your advertising and your ad strategy. And it's a little bit of a carryover from your days at Purple, I think, where you guys used a lot of objectives that most direct-to-consumer, direct response companies don't use. Like, legitimately, you had campaigns designed purely to get people to watch a video, campaigns designed purely to get traffic to a blog, and no further expectation, no real expectation of conversion or anything like that, but truly designed just to warm people up. And then you sort of have this segmented retargeting approach based on how much of your content people have consumed, right? So, to put it in really specific terms, you might run a video views campaign on Meta, and then have segmented retargeting for that video, if it's a minute video, based on people who've watched 50%, 75%, and hit them with essentially another ad that picks up where they left off, right?
Yep. Yeah, I think you did a good job of explaining. I mean, one of the things that we've always felt is, this is a full funnel approach. This isn't, kind of, typical, which I think it shifted a little bit, post iOS, but, a lot of brands are so DR focused. It's, let the algorithm find the buyers and, put in your DR focused creative and kind of sit back and let it run. And we really, there are some definite parallels to Purple and Kizik, and the fact that, having a moat with technology and patents and really disrupting a category, we felt like, there's a lot of education that needs to happen, a lot of, a very demonstrable product that allows us to really tell our story and do so in a unique way. And so I think for us, yeah, video views strategy where we're going hard at very top of funnel people that aren't necessarily in market at all, right? But we're being disruptive and really kind of putting, planting seeds for the future. We're not afraid to plant a seed and then wait 3 months down the road for when people really are in market to buy a pair of shoes and say, oh, what was that one brand where the guy was sliding down the banister and he landed in his shoes? Like, to us, that's a big win. We can instill the brand, at the very top of the funnel, if they're even in the funnel, and have them have that recall down the road. And like you said, when people show interest at, looking at view rate and percentage of the video watched, then we can really start to dial in creative beyond that. But it all starts with just that mindset of having a little bit more of a long-term approach, and then building your creative and strategy around that.
It's really interesting because I think, to be clear, this is not direct response, right? In the way people think about it. Like, I think that, especially as an agency person, and you've said, even to the C-suite people, I've had to have the same conversation where it's like, you get the kickback that like, hey, look, we're not Nike. We're not one of these big brands you're used to dealing with us. Like, we're used to dealing with Nike. Like, but our dollars have to get us a return. And just to be clear, you have return goals on your dollars. Like, you have efficiency targets that you need to hit, and you do this strategy and stay within those efficiency targets, right? Like, just to, be clear, it's still direct response. You still are saying, hey, we need to scale and spend at this level of CAC, right? Or of this level of MER, or whatever it is, right? And we still hit those, but we do it in a way where we are doing a massive, demand generation sort of effort top of funnel, where we don't expect those ads to create conversion results.
100%. Yeah. And I think that's important to clarify is this isn't just a brand play for us, or, kind of hope for a return. We're very dialed in measuring performance. I know you've talked about it before on your podcast, but having the right tools in place that allow us to look downstream and some of those metrics, whether that be email sign up rate or straight up looking at blended MER, payback windows, things like that. Like, we're measuring all of that, but we're just, going about it in a way that I think allows us, especially for us, we're really going for mass awareness and building a brand in a category that's very saturated. I mean, footwear has been around forever. There's thousands of brands. And a lot of them, what's kind of unique is, a lot of brands play off of, cause, or, you'll maybe hear sustainability here, or, but there's not a whole lot of innovation that's gone on in footwear. It's materials or colorways, but really, I think we have over 117 patents now, and really creating a category, this hands-free category. We knew we had to reach, and if we wanted to be a mass market brand, we needed to spend behind that to reach, the masses, and really start to implant this kind of seed of doubt that, like, hey, there's a better way. You've been putting your shoes on, maybe, an old fashioned way, and there's kind of a new standard in footwear coming. And that's really where we're trying to plant our flag. And then, I think once you start to develop and tell that story in a way that resonates with people, then you start to see people qualifying themselves and putting themselves in market when they didn't even know they were looking for that. So
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we had the conversation. You actually brought up some stuff that makes me. I want to ask a couple other things about specifically the footwear category, because that's what this show is about. Is sort of how to build brands in different verticals. But you brought up something. We talked about something off camera with specifically this strategy of like, okay, how is it that we truly disrupt the space? Like, we have to capture demand, we have to be top of mind, but we have to do that efficiently, like a DTC brand, right? Like, we can't, we can't treat it like Nike treats it, where they might have a whatever $20 million TV budget this week type of thing, and they're not looking for anything specific from that. There is returns, and I just want to clarify something. So like, when you're running campaigns that are more awareness focused, like, you have your numbers dialed in enough, right, on a video, or on like a type of video, where if somebody watches 50%, 75% of it, you're going to hit them with a certain message, middle of the funnel. That's where you might start looking for a conversion. and you have a good idea of like essentially the value of a person who watches a certain amount of your video. Am I right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's always, you know, as we know, video views, especially when there's no click involved, like those are the hardest elements to track within a, you know, within advertising. But, you know, with some of the, especially again, going back to that full funnel approach, you know, we have to have a little bit of that marketing faith to know that like when we get people to watch this video, we can look at downstream effects that, yeah, the follow-up creative beyond that is performing it in an X on a 1-day click, 7-day view, or whatever your attribution settings to say, okay, this specific mid-funnel piece of creative tied to this top of funnel piece of creative, you know, these two are meshing together. Yeah. So we almost look at both of those creatives together. One's just doing something a little bit different than the other. It's getting eyeballs, getting awareness and attention, looking at thumb stop rate. While the other one, we're looking at, okay, what happened when they clicked, came through the site, interacted with the products, you know, signed up for our email list. And so we just measure them differently. They each have different success metrics that play together as kind of a you know, I think you said something like Stockton and Malone, right? Like they're just doing different things. One's maybe, you know, making a slamming it home, and the other's, you know, Stockton's passing it in. And so for us, it's just how you view those people. So
John's dirty little secret is he wants to do marketing tweets in the day, but he wants to moonlight as like a sports analyst, you know, like, but only classic, like jazz sports.
My next podcast is specifically a Utah Jazz podcast. I'll talk about some other teams, I guess, when I'm talking about trades, but and actually the analogy I was just going to give was not that one, but that's a good one. It's kind of more like assessing, you know, instead of assessing each punch individually, you're assessing combos, right? Like, you know, what does this 1-2 punch, or what does this, you know, jab cross look like when we put it all together, as opposed to just trying to assess them each. So, I mean, you probably have metrics. It's not like those top of funnel pieces that have those, like, I don't know, you might say like lighter objectives have no, like, it's not like we just say, oh yeah, it's all feels and nice. Like, it's like, no, they actually do have KPIs that they're supposed to hit, right? Like they can get cut just like any other piece can, just like a conversions piece can. They have certain metrics that they're supposed to hit that signal to us they are truly creating awareness that will convert downstream, right?
Yep, 100%. I think that's a great way to put it. You know, we're not afraid to kill a campaign that like you said has you know, more top of funnel metrics or KPIs associated it, just because, you know, oh, that's more of a branding play or an awareness play. And so we don't really need to rely on them. Like they're dialed in the same way that, you know, bottom of the funnel, we're looking at return on ad spend or some of those others. So I think that's the way that we look at it. And I think if you're going to go down this path of, really having a diversified and full funnel strategy, then you have to look at them that way, or you won't get a true sign of success.
I think the hot take here is that we talked about off camera, and I think I've alluded to it before, is that, like, you know, after we talked, that it kind of prompted me to tweet this, that I was like, you know, if you are using the conversions objective on Facebook, even if you're going broad, are you really doing demand generation? Like, truly, it's the machine learning there is so strong that, like, are you really, you know, like, it's probably at best high level demand capture. Rarely are you taking someone who's not at least in market or affinity for your product and showing them an ad, unless you're using an objective like a video views or something like that. And that might be an unpopular opinion. Certainly, I think I asked that, and plenty of people were like, yeah, it totally is demand generation. And I think technically by definition it may be, but yeah, I don't know if it really fits the true spirit of demand gen. Because the machine learning is just too good on that platform at this point.
Yeah, probably depends on which marketer you ask on how well they think the machine learning is doing.
Right. Yeah.
I also think, it's an interesting debate, and I also think it depends a little bit on the product and the product category, right? Like for us, where we're coming into a market. What's that?
For you, everybody knows what shoes are already.
Yeah, but not everyone knows what HandsFree shoes are, right? And so for us, like when we come into someone's feed and they see initially a shoe, they're like, oh yeah, another shoe. But then we show what we call our aha moment of someone stepping into the shoe. It's like, okay, like, what is that? Is that a slip on? Is that, like, and so really, we definitely utilize that. And I, with us, I'd consider that, demand gen, in a sense that, we're coming into a category where people are unassuming of what we are, who we are. And so, but yeah, if you're coming in and into a market that, skincare, and you're building the brand off of that, then yeah, you're probably a little bit less demand gen. Someone else is probably doing that, up here on TV or YouTube and building that demand. But
I'll put it this way, right? In the US, most people wear shoes. Okay. So if you're using a conversions objective, most likely you're primarily reaching people who are within a certain time period going to buy some shoe. They're going to buy a shoe, right? That's just, where the machine learning's at. Whereas if you start to use a video views objective or reach objective, or, maybe not, let's do reach, but like video views, this is what we've been talking about. Yeah. You're actually saying, no, all those people who aren't within a week of buying some shoe somewhere, I also want to reach them and prime them for when they are about to buy a shoe, or accelerate them, maybe get them excited enough that when they see the next ad, they're like, okay, yeah, I wasn't really going to buy shoes yet, but these look sick, so I'm going to buy them. Right. And like truly creating demand where there wasn't one. Now, I will say that, we recently had CrossNet on, which is like, it's Foursquare volleyball. If you're putting a conversions ad for CrossNet in front of people, you probably are truly creating demand gen, because it wasn't like, those people were walking around about to buy a Foursquare volleyball net soon. That you're introducing a whole new product idea to them. So yeah, I'll call it demand gen then. But if you're in a commodities category and you're just differentiated like Kizik, right? Like you're in a commodities category, but you have a differentiated product. If all you ever did was use the conversions objective, you would really be limiting your ability to scale, I think.
For sure. Yep. Totally on board with that. And I think that's why, even with relying upon that, we really haven't seen the scale and the efficiency until we went a little bit broader, and which is interesting to say, because, broader and higher up, I'd say, in our funnel, and really, really focused on some of those things where early on, when you mentioned earlier, trying to prove, efficiency and get buy-in from C-suite, like, you kind of have to kind of prove those things out over time to then go broader, bring on connected TV, bring on linear, and have the faith that the same strategy you employed over here is going to translate to this channel. And so, yeah, I think if we relied on just conversions, especially now, we'd be part of the bloodbath that is the rest of, the apparel space and just some of the stories we've heard. And so I think that's really allowed us to stay a little bit above, some of the perils that have happened to brands after the iOS change, where it's just, that's all they were doing and didn't really diversify that strategy.
Absolutely. I want to call that out, because you're heavy paid media. Let's make no mistake about it. A lot of Kizik's growth comes from paid media. It's not like you guys have some huge SEO presence, or, it's a big, you probably have influencers, but it's not like that's where your like growth is coming from. It's heavy paid media, right? And within that media mix, heavy meta, correct?
Yep.
And many brands in that category got hit very hard by the iOS updates. And I was asking you, like I asked off screen, like, okay, so, this is one of the things in 2022, we can't ignore, hey, here was this growth story. We were taking off 2019 rocket ship, 2020, even more rocket ship, because everybody had all this money they wanted to spend. 2021 was a retraction or retracement for a lot of brands, especially that were heavy meta in their media mix. And you kind of said like, it really wasn't, it was kind of a bump, but not a big speed bump for us because of how you did it, right? Because a lot of your conversions are driven from audiences that have been built within platform. So it was like, you didn't really see that efficiency hit as much.
Yeah. I think, and not to make light of some of the businesses that definitely have struggled, but yeah, we feel really blessed that, we've been able to succeed through some of those issues. And I mean, as every marketer, I was panic, get in panic mode as starting to see what was going on. And we saw some drop and were affected. But I think, yeah, what you just brought up and to reiterate, the fact that we had already been thinking this way well ahead of any changes to iOS. And now we have, things with Google coming up with cookies. I mean, we're really looking at, how can we make the best creative possible that almost allows people to qualify themselves based off of how much they're watching, what signals are they showing with that creative. Then we can almost, come back and serve a subsequent ad, that makes sense without relying on the algorithm to say, okay, here's what's next in what we see algorithmically to serve to this person. Not saying we're ever going to outsmart any algorithm, but I think it allows us to hedge our bets a little bit where, we were already down that path. And I think a lot of brands are starting to try and figure out, a new path for themselves as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about some stuff that you've hinted at already. And I think that the big thing when we tell these kind of brand growth stories, and give these sort of brand studies and stuff like that, and it's the standard on podcasts where it's like XYZ brand did huge thing, and here's how they did it, and let's talk about it in really vague terms that mostly people can't really use. I do think we have tried to get specific and tactical here and said, like, look, this is how we do it from an ad strategy standpoint. Maybe not all of you want to buy into that, but this is how it's worked for Kizik, right? And anybody can go and try and do that with their brand, right? Where they're going to say, all right, we're going to commit to making top of funnel engaging content that's main job is to engage, right? And we're not going to expect it to give us returns, and we're going to create this kind of like multi-tiered strategy, this true demand gen strategy. Anybody can do that. But I do want to talk about with Kizik specifically, why somebody couldn't just people have this tendency to say, hey, if Manscaped can do it, then I can do it, right? Like, and sell the same products and stuff. And it's like, well, different circumstances, right? So I do want to talk about what is it that Kizik has that are the true unique advantages of Kizik, the true modes of Kizik, that it's like, hey, you can't really do exactly what we've done. You can't really recreate and run the same exact playbook because of this thing, but here's what you can do.
Yeah. I mean, I think I mentioned earlier, I mean, it always starts with an amazing product, right? And I think even coming in and first seeing Kizik early on was like, okay, I mean, probably a lot of the same reaction, people that aren't, we call in our needs-based category, people that, may have limb loss or that are pregnant or have Parkinson's or, either it's a short-term ailment or a long-term, like that's usually a no-brainer. People can see it and be like, okay, I get it. But really for the everyday, like, how is this better than me cramming my foot into my whatever shoe, right? Like, really it starts with an amazing product that once people can see it and then try it on, it's this aha moment of like, oh my gosh, why would I go back to this, antiquated way? And I almost compare it to like rolling down, your window versus automatic windows. Like, yeah, you could roll down your window. We can all do that. But why? And no cars coming out have, a crank to roll down your window, right? And our kids will never know what that is. But yeah, our real mode is the foresight from our founder and the team that we have in place to, our lab and innovation team is amazing. And the fact that we have, I think I mentioned, over 117 patents on, slightest differences in how you can put on a shoe without using your hands. We have, internal technology, external technology, and really that builds this barrier around the brand to say, yeah, we can always do better at our at showcasing and tactically positioning our story throughout different channels but really having this patent behind us that allows us to have a unique spot within, a $300 billion industry, to carve out a niche for ourselves really allows us to really, have the the growth that we've seen, you know, and so it's nice to have a product where, you know, you're not just competing on style or you know, brand message, but that's been critical.
I'll put it this way, you know, if you're looking to sort of like replicate the unicorn, like, you know, there's certain things you can't recreate. Circumstances is one of the big ones, right? Like you try as you might, you could run the exact same playbook as Dollar Shave Club today, and you can't. Like it just doesn't work. They got it at the right time. Okay, so there's that. But this isn't the issue. Like the true moat with Kizik is like, here's the litmus test. If the moat wasn't real, Nike wouldn't be licensing the technology from you. They would have just done it.
Yeah.
Because that's what they do. That's their whole thing, right? So like, yeah, I mean, that's like a true moat that, you know, somebody can't replicate that. So, I mean, it's something people need to know when they hear this growth story of like, okay, here's a unique element here that like, you can't just go out and do this after listening to one podcast, right?
Yeah. And I think to your point about circumstances too, I mean, I think there's been definitely a shift too that I mean, I think, you know, we could pat ourselves on the back all day long as marketers, but a lot of it, like you said, is timing. And, you know, seeing a shift, you know, especially during COVID and I think, you know, it started before then, but the shift to, you know, comfort and convenience and athleisure and like this.
You guys have written that for sure.
Like that's been a huge part of our growth. I mean, you've seen, you know, brands, you know, before us kind of really push that message and us being able to come in and capitalize on like a design and style trend that's already going. And then us bringing in a unique technology piece to it. That's like, hey, we've taken this, you know, convenience and how do we make your lives easier? And we've added another element that's like the cherry on top. Yeah. You know, that's been amazing for us and continuing to ride that because, you know, I'll be the first to say we're not the leading brand and fashion footwear, right? I mean, there's plenty of brands that are pushing the boundaries there and doing amazing things. But yeah, you know, we believe that HandsFree is kind of that next step that is going to be the new standard within footwear. And you've already seen brands, you know, and have, you know, really focus on like, they're not going to add laces to their shoes ever again. And so like this movement and shift towards like, I just want ease in my life. I want convenience. I got so many other things to worry about. Like, you know, convenience and ease is, you know, that's a place that I don't even want to think about it. So,
right. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, I'm glad. Thank you for acknowledging the circumstances. And it's similar almost in a sense to Purple, right? Where it was like, you got a couple tailwinds there that were circumstantial. Yes, it was a unique mechanism on a known product and it was, you know, not replicable instant. Like somebody couldn't go, all right, now I'm going to source that mattress. Serta couldn't be like, we're just going to source that design and we're going to like, you know, bury these guys because you had it. They couldn't do it. Right. There is that and that's not insignificant, but there's some tailwinds too, right? Like with Kizik, like you said, I mean, athleisure. And then the other one is just, you know, you kind of caught it at a time where, and same as Purple, it would have been really weird if you talked to me in 2012 about super weird about like buying a mattress online. I'd be like, how would you possibly ever buy a mattress online? And I would have said the same thing about shoes. It's like, well, you got to try them on, you know, like but like, people have just gotten way more used to buying stuff online that, you know, they know that they'll be able to send it back if they don't like it. That's, you don't have to even overcome that barrier anymore, right? Like that you would have at one time. And, you know, especially during 2020, people got like way more comfortable. A lot more people got more comfortable buying more things online. So yeah, I mean, we don't want to downplay that. So I do want to hit on one thing though, like in footwear specifically, what are the unique elements in the footwear space? Because we are talking about, you know, how to grow a footwear brand. So what are the unique things in the footwear space that, like some of the stuff we've talked about, the ad strategy, that can be applied to a lot of different types of brands. What are the unique advantages and things kind of working in your favor in the footwear space, that things it's like, hey, you know, this part, it's a little bit easier for you than it is for other brands. And then, you know, what are the things that are like, well, this part's a little harder for you than it is for other brands?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit on one, you know, as you talked about this, the ability for consumers to, you know, the mind shift of being able to buy online try and home, right? I think that's been really unique, and especially in footwear where, I'd say there's definitely people that are tied to a specific brand and they only wear that brand. But I think at a price point of $99 to $125, people are willing to take a chance on a brand that they may have never heard of. So I think that's an advantage for us, is if, because one of the things we're fighting against is this notion that Kizik is a gimmick, right? I think when you see something new and you position it in a way that is a bit disruptive, people can be like, okay, like what am I going to get in the box when I order this, right? And I think that's been what we've been trying to push forward with our brand, is like, this is the new standard in footwear, and so I think footwear by itself, though, is gives people an opportunity to express themselves, and I think, as I mentioned, people are willing to explore their wardrobe, and if they can find something that really allows them to be expressive, and then also solve a need, or we have a big portion of our consumer base that are our needs based, and that doesn't necessarily mean the elderly or the adaptive, but also our pregnancy and travel, and those people that just are looking for a better way, right? Almost the early adopters into new technology, like those people are a big part of our consumer base. So I think the price point has been big for us, and then just being able to break through a category, which I think is an advantage for us, that's been relatively stagnant in innovation, right? I think us coming in and being a bit disruptive there has been good for us, which is, on the flip side, is a challenge, right? I mean, if you think, looking back at Purple, we had hundreds of bed-in-a-box competitors, and we were like, oh my gosh, this is massive market. And then, coming over to Kizik and looking at footwear, where it's, thousands of brands and new ones popping up every day, you're having to cut through this noise that, people have been pushing, unique features and trying to differentiate themselves. And there's a lot of skepticism. So that's been one thing that I think's been a bit challenging in the footwear space. And then, I guess to go back to my first point too, I mean, we, like it or not, we talk about internally, we're in the fashion space. People wear footwear to express themselves. It's part of who they are. And so if you're not following on with trend or ahead of trend and keeping up, like, it doesn't matter what your product does. People don't want to wear something that doesn't fit with their personal style. So that's been a challenge for us, is realizing that, like, just because we have this unique technology doesn't mean we can forget the basics of comfort and design and style and building a brand, right, that people want to associate themselves with.
And and it's such a tough one, because it's subjective, right? Like, you might think, oh, here's going to be the next stop, but if you miss, that's it. Like, if people don't like it, then they're not going to buy it, and they're going to vote with their wallets. I'll call out a couple. I actually used to be a shoe salesman. I worked at a running store all through high school, and I managed a running store my first year out of college. One of the biggest challenges in the footwear space is the barrier to entry. You cannot, like you can in other, well, let me put it this way. If I'm going to launch, I'm going to source pretty much the same stuff everyone else sources. Like, and legitimately, unless I go invent something myself, like, it's pretty hard to find something no one else sources, right? And I'm going to have to differentiate on, like, design, really. Or if I'm going to launch a razor brand, for the most part, I'm going to go source what everyone else sources, and I'm going to have to try and differentiate somehow in my marketing. In footwear, you can't, and some brands can actually make it doing that, right? Like, they really can. They can make it doing that. In footwear, you cannot, right? Like, it's just too, like, technology driven, and it's been too technology driven for too long. So much so that, like, you're like, the innovation has been stagnant, because it's like these small technological advances that just are not exciting, right? The main two that I can think of in the last maybe 10 years are, like, something like Kizik HandsFree, and then something like a baseline waterproof athleisure shoe, right? Where it's like Vessi. So, like, yeah, I mean, it's like but it's all technological advances. And I cannot think of a single footwear brand that isn't differentiated somehow with some kind of, and maybe you can, but with some kind of actual technological advance where they're sourcing the same product, you know, anyone else can source and somehow differentiating somewhere else. It's just not the case, right? Like you can't do that like you can with an apparel brand or like a, you know, different types of brands. So that's one of the main disadvantages. There is a true barrier to entry where you have to do some kind of innovation with technology. One of the big advantages though, I think, is stickiness. So if somebody actually likes your product, I mean, it's like people will buy it in every color. They will keep buying it for forever. When you innovate on it and you make a V2, they'll like sometimes be upset that the V1, like they're like, oh, the V1 was so good though, right? Like it's, and they'll buy them, you know, so like, you know, a even average LTV is a multiple of the initial purchase, not just like a 1.5x or something like that. If your product is good and it does actually have that technological innovation.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because that is something obviously, you know, as we're in growth mode, that, you know, looking at LTV and that stickiness is something that's always top of mind. And yeah, I think that's a great call out. I mean, whereas again, calling out mattresses, I mean, that was really hard. I mean, it was kind of a one-time purchase, and you're not needing to buy a mattress and, you know, or a set for 5-8 years. And so I think the ability to, and we've tried to stay away from like this drop culture and this scarcity model, but there is something that inherently built in, that if you can hook someone and they're a fan, like that brand loyalty is there. And one thing that we've seen that I haven't experienced before is the word of mouth. I mean, when people find something, love it, and I think this definitely isn't perhaps unique to footwear, but you know, seeing word of mouth upwards of 25% for us when we look at our post-purchase surveys it blows my mind. They'd be willing to go tell a family or a friend that, hey, I'm vouching for this brand, you should go buy. I mean, I mean, that's music to a marketer's ear, right? And so, I mean, that's something that is really goes along with what you're saying is, you know, you have this tribe and these evangelists going out as an army just selling your brand for you, where, you know, a lot of brands are having to scratch and claw to get people to sign up for their rewards and loyalty programs. And these people are just out doing it. It has been really fascinating for me to see compared to other brands that I've worked with.
And it's almost like in the footwear space, the consumer almost like a little bit wants you to do the drop thing, right? They're almost like, yeah, give me a limited edition, right? Like they're just, I don't know, trained for it. Whereas like in some spots, they're like, oh my gosh, you guys are just doing these drops. Like I can't get the shoes all the time, or I can't get the product all the time, or whatever, right? Like it's a little bit different. Next thing I kind of want to hit on here is, as an in-house person, you've been in-house for a little while now, you were in the agency world for a minute. One of the things that I kind of like to ask on here is, like, as an in-house person, like we're agency people, what is something that you as an in-house person feel like, hey, we only looking at one brand, there's definitely like, this is what we miss. And this is like the main question, one of the biggest questions I would have for someone who looks over a lot of brands.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of hit on it actually, just barely, but I keep thinking about community, and I'm always, you know, I think that's one thing, you know, we talked off camera about some things that I think Kizik could be doing better at, or that I may do differently, but I'd love to hear your perspective on, like, what are the most successful brands doing to build community, where I think in the past that maybe wasn't an emphasis for brands, but now where there's so much, you know, we've talked about this whole podcast, there's a lot of options out there and there's a lot of noise. You know, have you seen something that the brands are doing tactically, or just as kind of a brand to really invite in a community and build those relationships? I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, I got some craziness going on outside my door here, but yeah, no, I think it is, like, community is a tough one. And the biggest thing I've seen for brands that build community, because it's like this very like nebulous, like build a community. Everybody in DTC says that, but like, what does that actually mean? I've seen it a couple times, and that's the thing. It is when you see a lot of brands, it's like, you know, one of those, oh, now I know it when I see it situations. And it's one of two things in my view, and Casey can hop in on this too. The first is a person, right? So there is a person associated with this brand that people, it's hard for people to know, like, and trust a brand. There are some brands that achieve this, like Apple and Nike, but that's really difficult. Okay. But it's easy for people to know, like, and trust a person, even if they're primarily associated with the brand, and the primary association the person has with them is with that brand, right? Like, I know, like, and trust Ryan Dice, even though I don't actually know him, right? But I know, you know, I will trust anything digital marketer does because he is associated with it. You know, it's not corporate to me. So it's almost always either a person where people can, like, endear themselves to that person and enjoy that person's content, and like, there's a personal brand associated with the brand. Sometimes it's already an influencer who's partnered with the brand and is an equity shareholder. Sometimes the brand owner or founder or whatever themselves becomes that, like, personal brand, but they're the face of the brand, right? Like, they're a lot of times they're going to be the ones, you know, when you send the thank you for purchasing email, there's going to be a little video in there of them recorded saying, like, hey, thanks so much, I want to tell you this story and stuff, and like, the story of the brand is their story and people are endeared to them. That creates community, and it's like instant, right? It'll create a community on their Instagram, on the brand's Instagram. People feel like they know that person. The other is the other way I've seen it done is brands that do content for content's sake, right? And I'm talking about, like, not content related to footwear and shoes and foot health and stuff that's like content leading me to a purchase, but like, literally, if it's like, okay, you know, we have a lot of people who buy who are, you know, like, kind of athleisure moms, right? So they want to be able to throw on a shoe that they can take the kids to school in, go to the gym in, come and do, you know, like, literally having a podcast that is a, you know, Kizik sponsored podcast, not an existing one, but a Kizik, like, owned podcast that is that, right? And it's not just talking about shoes, it's talking about what it's content for content's sake, right? Like, the content itself stands on its own, and they almost become a media company that creates community as well. And that creates a lot of great top of funnel effects as well. Whereas, like, the person based one, so think of it like this, like, if you would do it top of funnel independently, like build a personal brand or build like a content thing, right? Like a blog, whatever. Then that is what most of the time creates community. Now you can do like other things, like create the Facebook group, nurture in the Facebook group, you know, all that stuff. That's all like the tactical, how it gets done. But the brands that do it really well, that's like the core element, is that there's either a person that, like, people just attach to and endear to, or there is just content and conversation for content and conversation's sake, not for anything related to the product's sake.
Awesome. I love that. That's great.
Yeah. Cool. So we'll wrap it up. Casey, did you have, sorry.
I was just going to say, you know, especially, you know, we talked a little bit about the iOS update. And since that happened, one thing about growing community that I think I've noticed, generally speaking, across our brands is a focus to actually feature the people who would be in that community in ads more. You know, it's kind of like you could say trendy or whatever you want to call it. But I've said for a little bit now, if you only gave me one format of ad that we could run across all of our different ad accounts, right now, at least, it would probably be like UGC or UGC mashups, because they tend to work pretty good. And I think that's not a coincidence, especially on the back of like the iOS 14 update. I think we talked about it on a recent episode, but a lot of brands, rather than getting good at playing Facebook, they had to figure out for the first time, maybe ever, how to get good at actual marketing again. They had to go back to fundamentals, back to that. So, you know, borrowing from John's like framework here, and I don't know if you actually take credit for this, John, or if you put it together, but the like avatar, angle, ad, lander, offer, you know, like it all starts with the avatar, right? Like it starts with knowing who your customer is. And same way we talked about with your shoes, Brett, there's different use cases for different people. And those different people are just different avatars. And how well does your brand know your different avatars, and how good are you at meeting them where they are currently and speaking their language to them?
Community almost always stems from an internal brand champion who knows the customers just like really well, thinks about them, and really is one of them, and then that like community will just stem from that because they just want to engage with the other people like them.
Yeah, I love that. Kind of turning the them to an us, right? I think that's
exactly. You got it. Okay, so we'll wrap up here. I want to do one more thing here. What would you say as of right now? We're doing this interview, kind of Q2 2022. What would you say that Kizik does really well right now, like today? And it could be tactical or it could be high level if you want. What would you say that Kizik needs to get better at? This we don't do well, and this is something we need to get better at. And then, give us your kind of rest of 2022, 2023 e-commerce marketing hot takes. What do you think that is an unpopular opinion or that maybe a lot of people don't think?
Yeah. I think we probably talked about some of these, but I think, again, having some past experience and the team that we've built, I think we do a really good job of really communicating and showing our unique selling propositions and really our I think planting some doubt in people's minds, and I mean that in a positive way of really being able to communicate our differentiators and I also think one of the things we do as a brand that I think we've done really well, which has been a focus from day one, is being in a very approachable brand. That's one of the key words that we've just every conversation we have when we start to evaluate our brand is like, are we being approachable? And I think that invites the people in, and we haven't been perfect at it, but we want to be welcoming to all, especially we call it a big tent brand, where you're talking to people up and down age ranges, male, female, kids are coming out in the summer. Like we, which is really hard to do, by the way, but to be inclusive to, a wide range of people, and to be approachable. I think we've done a great job of that. Where I think we've struggled a little bit, which you guys have hit on a little bit, is really opening up the curtain a little bit and showing behind the scenes and putting a little bit more of a face and the people behind our product, especially our patents and that story. I mean, we've been running 1 million miles an hour, and I think being able to, give people a peek behind, because it is, if we were maybe another footwear brand that was just kind of playing off of the same, materials and things that are out in the market, it's a little bit harder to come up with this story. But really having something unique and the fact that our team is literally in a workshop tinkering and building and coming up with new ideas it's a little bit like Willy Wonka. And I think we could do a better job of telling that story and connecting people with the brand a little bit more. So I think those are two areas that have done well. And I mean, there's a whole list of things that, we're just getting into more of the SEO organic side of things, and that'll be important for us. But always stuff to do, right?
Yeah, I like it. No, and it's true. Like, the community question, that's a great question, right? Like it's like, hey, how is this actually done? When you've seen it done, and it's crazy how it's like, rare. But yeah, like, how do we do that better is kind of what you're saying. And I think like your vision is like, I think we can peel back the curtain a little bit, which is definitely a good place to start. All right, give me your hot takes. Hot take for rest of 2022, 2023. Where do you think that e-commerce in general is headed, right? Like, it's a very interesting time. We're like, hey, are we in a recession? Is the economy down? What's going on here?
Yeah, I thought about this one. One that I think is interesting is we've heard a lot about social shopping and what people are doing in China, and I actually think we're years away from that here in the US. I think people have talked about 2023 and social shopping. That's going to be the only way that you're going to move product, and I actually think we're far off from that. I don't know, that may be, it's probably not a huge spicy take, but for me, I think that we seem pretty far behind in that realm. I think influencers and where we're at are going to continue to be the norm, but I think we're far off from a true, social shopping, commerce, for D2C. So I think it'll be interesting to see how that plays out and if we ramp that up or not, but
for sure. Yeah. I've had takes like that before too, where it's like, yeah, I mean, this seems like a hot item, but is it, how far are we from this being like real? Like, this is it. This is the way. I love it. Well, Brett, thank you so much for being on. Appreciate it. Have enjoyed immensely talking with you. Love the tactical episodes, like where we're talking ad strategy and stuff like that. It's a good time for me as a paid media guy. So thanks for coming on. And yeah, Casey, take us out. Say the YouTube things.
All right. Yes. Thank you for joining us today. This was a great interview. John, thanks for running this interview. You're doing a great job with this whole series. And Modern Commerce, thank you for tuning in. If you watched this far into the video, I would hope that you liked it. Otherwise, what are you doing? Just torturing yourself, watching stuff you don't enjoy? Like, come on, what are you doing? You're on YouTube here. So go ahead and drop a like onto the video. Come on, hit the subscribe button so you're subscribed to our channel. Let people know what you're into on the YouTubes. Go ahead and hit the bell icon so that you get notified whenever we drop new content onto our channel. And as always, until next time, see ya.